Unit 5, Lesson 16. 16.1, don't solve it. Is the solution positive or negative? So we're just trying to figure out if the solution is going to be a positive or negative number. We don't need to know what the actual answer is. So first one, they are multiplying. Negative times a positive equals a negative. So this one is negative. Next one, negative and B, or a number and B next to each other, means multiply. Negative times something is a positive. So negative times a negative equals a positive. Here we are combining. We're adding. Negative 8.7 plus something equals negative 1.4. I notice that 1.4 in absolute value is smaller than 8.7, but it's still a negative. That means that when I combined negative 8.7, if I had negative 8.7 plus another number, that gave me a negative answer. That means this number needs to be a positive, and its absolute value will be smaller than 8.7 because my larger number is a negative, so my answer is a negative. So negative 8.7 plus a positive number will leave us with a negative answer. And I could figure out what that was just to prove it. So I could go 8.7 minus 1.4 is 7.3. So negative 8.7 plus positive 7.3, that means we subtract because they are two opposite numbers. 7 minus 3 is 4, 8 minus 7 is 1, larger number was negative, so the answer was negative. So this had to be a positive number. And the last one, negative 8.7 minus something equals negative 1.4. So again, I have negative 8.7. Subtracting means add the opposite. I know I have to end up with a negative 1.4. Well, if I take a negative number plus another negative number, that would get me a bigger negative. But 1.4, and this is point, I don't know why I have this here. Negative 8.7 plus another negative would not make 1.4 because negative plus a negative is another negative. So that means this number has to be negative as well. Or yeah, this one has to be a negative as well, because that way I can go minus a negative turns into plus, which is like this. It's the same problem, notice here. It's just that I would have to have two negatives to make it a plus sign. So this one is also a negative, because I can't take a negative number and subtract something from it and get negative 1. I would need to add to get to negative 1, or have a positive number to get me there. And if you have questions, please come ask me. Let's scroll down. For each situation, there are two equations that could represent, that these represent. So we're going to look at some word problems and figure out which ones would match up to the word problems. Explain the variable, what the v represents in each situation, and what would make the equation true. So let's look at the first one. Between 6 a.m. and noon, the temperature rose 12 degrees Fahrenheit to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So from 6 to noon, the temperature rose 12 degrees to 4 degrees, and so it ended up being 4 degrees. So something plus 12 gets us 4 degrees, and that one is right here. So here's one of them. We could find another equation because we can just rewrite this problem now. We can say v equals, well, we want to know what V equals. V equals 4 minus 12, because I could just subtract 12 from both sides. V equals 4 minus 12. We could also say that V equals 4 plus a negative 12. And if I look through here, here is that one. And that means that V is equal to negative 8. Negative 8 plus 12 equals 4. 4 minus 12 is negative 8, or 4 plus 12, V equals negative, oops, not negative 18, but just negative 8. Next one. At midnight, the temperature was negative 6 degrees. By 4 a.m., the temperature had fallen to negative 16. So pause the video and see if you could figure this one out. At midnight, it was negative 6 degrees. By 4 a.m., the temperature had fallen to, so it's negative 6 plus something, and we end up with negative 16 degrees. So negative 6 plus V equals 16, negative 16, which is here. I could also take this negative 6 and put it on this side. So V equals negative 16. And if I want to put this over here, if it's a negative, it is now plus. So negative 16 plus 6 is here. So what does V equal? That means that it is negative 10. It represents the change in temperature between midnight and 4 a.m. And that's what happened. 3. Try this one. The temperature is 0 degrees at midnight and is dropping 3 degrees every hour per hour. The temperature is negative 6 degrees at a certain time. So if we know if it's dropping 3 degrees every hour, and at some point it's negative 6, we need to figure out what could be the opposite of that. So we could take both sides and divide it by, you could either divide by 3 or multiply by 1/3, because you're either, to get rid of this negative 3 in front, you can either take it and divide by negative 3, or dividing by negative 3 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So times 1/3. Either way, but we would know that if it was this way, negative 6 divided by negative 3, V equals 2. And we can look up here and go negative 3V equals negative 6. And that's the same thing as taking negative 6 and multiplying it by negative 1/3. And both of these would equal 2. And the last one, number 4, if you want to try it. Temperature 0 degrees at midnight. It is dropping 3 degrees per hour. So again, it is dropping 3 degrees per hour, and at a certain time, the temperature is at 9 degrees. So again, I can either take that and divide it by negative 3. So V equals 9 divided by 3 is 3. Positive divided by negative is a negative. Or it would be taking negative 3V equals 9 and multiplying both sides by negative 1/3. Notice that 9 times negative 1 is negative 9, divided by 3 is still negative 3. So either way, that would be this one right here and this one. And V equals negative 3. Okay, and scrolling down to the next part. This, if you logged into your book, you could also see that you could play around with the thermostat and or thermometer and change things to see what happened. So this was representing that if you go into your book, you could play around with it and try more practice. The last one, 16.3, animals changing altitudes. Match each situation with a diagram. So if you notice, here are some diagrams. First thing I would look at is that some of them have points and some of them just have double lines. If they have double lines, that's usually an addition problem. And the one with points means that they give you some type of subtraction. So here on this number line, I know that it is going positive 3 at some point, because this is a positive 3, and this is a negative, and it's going from 3 to negative 7. So 1, 2, 3, and then 7 more, and that would be a negative 10. And this would be something I would do even before I even look at the word problems, is try and figure out what it's talking about. Here it's probably going to end at a 3, and it's going to have some type of positive 10 in the problem. Here it's going to end at a negative 3, and it's going to take away, because it's going down, some type of negative 10 over there. This one looks like an addition problem because there's 2 lines. I have a negative 3, and then from here to here is a positive 10, because that's going up 3 and up 7 more, so positive 10. This one, again, 2 lines going down 3, and then from 3 to 13, that's going down another 10 more. Now we can go back and look at some situations. First one says a penguin is standing 3 feet above sea level. So usually that's a positive 3. And then dives down 10 feet. So that means a negative 10. What is its depth? So it went up 3 and down 10, and turns out the first one is A. So A matches up to number 1. Or A, and we can say this is, we can say, let's see, this could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So A matches up with, A matches up with number 1. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oops. A dolphin is swimming 3 feet below sea level. So I know they're negative 3 feet below. Then jumps up 10 feet. So from that negative 3, they went up 10. What is its height at the top of the jump? I know it was started off going down 3 feet below sea level. Then it jumped up 10 feet. And that means it ends up at a positive 7, because if it went 3 feet below and then from there it jumped up 10, that means that it ends up at 7 feet above sea level. So that one goes with number 2. Number 3. A sea turtle is swimming 3 feet below sea level, negative 3. Then dives down 10 feet. So it's going 10 feet farther. What is its depth? So it's swimming 3 feet below and dives down 10. What do you think? Which one would match up to that? This one right here. It's swimming 3 feet below and then dives down 10, so it ends up at negative 13 feet. And that's number 3. And I forgot to do this one. That's a negative 3, and this is a positive 10. Number 4. An eagle was flying 10 feet above sea level, so above sea level, and then dives down to 3 feet above sea level. So it's diving down, and it ends up at 3 feet above sea level. What is its change in altitude? So that one's a little bit different. It starts off at 10, dives down, and ends up at 3. So we know if it ends up, that's usually a point. So let's see, it started off at 10, so up 10, and then it dives down here. So what is how far was altitude from this piece to this piece? So it had a change in altitude of 7. So that would be number 4. And let's see. That was number 4. Okay. Number 5. A pelican is flying 10 feet above sea level. then dives down, reaching 3 feet below sea level. What was its change in altitude? So it started off at 10 and it ended at -3. Again, another end point. So let's see, it started off at 10, flying 10 feet above sea level, and then dives down, reaching 3 feet below sea level. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Starts off at 10 feet above. It dives down and reaches 3 feet below. So the difference in altitude is from the point to the end of the arrow. So 10 and 3, it had a change in altitude of 13 feet. Or -13 because it went down 13 feet. So that would be number 5. And so the last one should be 6. Let's see. A shark is swimming 10 feet below sea level, so -10. Then swims up, reaching 3 feet below sea level. So it swims up and ends up at -3. What was its change in depth? So it started off at -10. It swam up and reached -3. So its change in depth was from -10 to -3. So 7 would be the difference between the two. And that's number 6. Now write an equation to represent each animal situation and answer the question. Be prepared. And so that's what we did, is by doing these, we put these in here. So this was, let's see, next to each animal. Penguin, 3 feet above sea level, plus a -10, which equaled -7. It started out at -3 feet, then it jumped up 10 feet. -3 plus 10 is +7. It started down below at -3, then dives down 10 more. It ended up at -13. 10 feet above sea level, then dives down to 3 feet. So 10 plus something equals 3. So 10 plus a -7 equals 3. Flying 10 feet above, dives down to reach 3 feet below. So it's flying 10 above. It does something. It ends up at -3. So 10 plus a -13 is what we figured out was a -3. And the last one, a shark is swimming 10 feet below, then swims up, reaching 3 feet below. -10 plus 7 equals -3. All right, that should be the end of all of your unit lessons. Make sure to do the practice problems.